Hello. Today we're talking with Oksana Vovchenko, the head of the Benjamin Franklin Discussion Club. And we are talking about the accumulation of wealth and other things and inheritance. So would you like to present the topic, please?
Well, I will try. Actually, we humans are accumulators. We always collect and store something to sustain our life. But
yeah, in English language, there is a word hoarder. Hoarder is someone who is collecting things, and those things are useless and they fill up his apartment, and it's even a disease. Hoarders. Yeah.
Yeah, and as soon as we are mortal, so our lives do not last forever. So we are going to leave this to someone, usually to our children. Do our children really need what we are going to leave them? Will it help them, or will it damage their life? I would like to discover these set of questions today.
There are very different mentalities in the world still, even though we are getting universal things with internet and other things. Still, the mentalities are very different. So in different societies and in different times, the approach to these things can be quite different. So
I think that, I'm sorry, I would suggest to start from the very basic, from the property right.
from what?
Property rights.
Property rights, yes. So the basic of property rights in most countries that I was familiar with, they are trying not to give the real property rights to people. For example, in England and Canada, legally, the entire land belongs to the Crown. And Crown gives out the concessions where we actually rent in this land for long periods of times. In London, land is rented out for 999 years to people. It's like a legality of the idea. The similar system is in Israel, probably because the British administration was setting up the laws and the rules. Again, the land does not belong to people. It belongs to the government, and the government gives it out. Probably it is needed so people will not make any attempts to say this is my land and I do not want the jurisdiction of the monarch or or the government. Maybe, but there is very significant here that actually nobody actually owns anything in terms of property. So it's an illusionary right to use the property and mostly to pass it on, to sell it, or to give as a gift. I don't know how it is in Ukraine. Do you know how it is in Ukraine?
In Ukraine, ownership for land is not regulated, actually. It is under development only. That's a big problem, actually. There is no proper legislation for that.
All right. So I would even go back to the old ages where inheriting things was the question of the survival. It was quite important. But even in these times, people used to bury with their debt very significant things that they could have used in their lives, like a weapon and other things. But back then, the inheritance was very significant. And also, it's very important, the treatment of the poor. With the Christianity, the poverty ceased to be something ridiculous, something negative. Jesus Christ has brought this notion that in order to be spiritual, you shouldn't be rich. You should leave everything, you should distribute to everybody. And he said that it, as far as to the camel to get through the needle opening, as to the rich man to get to the heavenly kingdom. I think at that point, the treatment of the poor have changed, right? But still, I'm surprised when, for example, in Russia, they treat their poor with such hate. They say nищеброд. And we have this in Western world, loser, but not necessarily in monetary terms. But as a matter of fact, in the societies where the wealth is not demonstrated much, where the millionaire and the jobless people look quite the same, like in Scandinavia, in Western Europe, in Northern America, where there is no need to demonstrate the wealth in order to get a special place in the society. The question of whether you have reached this level or not, getting off the agenda as much as it used to be, right? Although in countries where the wealth and the way how you dress and what car you drive really impresses, and when it's an instrument of influence, which are, I believe, the Oriental countries and some East European countries, maybe Russia, I think it is for sure. So then it is way more important. Also, the mentality in terms of owning the property or renting the property. The West are trying to promote owning the property as an American dream. Everyone has to have a house, home. But in Europe, for example, and new generations in the Western world, they tend not to buy the properties. And they can rent their whole lives. So it is the question of what is accepted in this or another society as a legitimate aim, target for the people. Even in one country, it can be different. For example, in Canada, in Vancouver, people less materialistic. They want less property and they value more outdoors activities, and they smoke a lot of marijuana. Of course, it might influence. Marijuana became legal in Canada. And in Toronto, they are way more property oriented, and even here we can see these differences. Of course, in immigrant societies, each community has its own values, right? But in order to tell what's the main direction, how it develops, I believe that with virtual worlds and internet and exposure to the internet, the value of the physical things is going down in terms of importance in lives of people. When we didn't have those virtual worlds, it was important for us to make a beautiful interior where we sit, to have expensive things. But when your attention is 99% of the time is focused on your display, it becomes less and less important what actually surrounds this display, because you spend most of the time there and not here. And it turns out that maybe we're experiencing the great age of equality, because like I used to say, the display, the content that we actually see at the interface of our computers, they're all the same. Bill Gates, when he switches on his computer, and the poor Indian guy in India who paid a couple of rupees to get to the internet cafe, and he switches on the computer, he gets to the same interface, the same programs, the same internet. So, of course, there are expensive things on the internet that still can distinguish between the rich people and not rich people, but most of the content is free, all right? And this free content and the instruments, the universal instruments that we use in order to access this free content makes us all equal. And more we get into this virtual reality, less we care what physical environment we're living in. Do you agree with this?
Yes, I agree. And I agree that to store physical things is very useless because they become not modern, not contemporary, or not fashion. For example, I remember our grandmothers and grandfathers who stored some fabric or dishes for us.
Because that's what was their world. That was as important to them as our virtual world for us.
Yeah, when we grew up, we didn't need that things actually. And even if you build a big house or buy an apartment, you're never sure that your children will live in it. They may select to live in another city or even another country.
I did exactly that. I was changing my mentality. I came to Canada and I bought a huge house with huge piece of land. And I thought that this will be for generations. But nobody, not my kids or anybody, wanted this house. And I had to abandon it. So really the mentality has changed drastically, tremendously.
So I think it's useless to store some material things, but what about capital? If we accumulate wealth in the form of capital to leave it to our children, do we really support them?
Again, depends on mentality. In Canada, if they are not immigrants, usually they do not support. But because they still have this wealth from previous generation, when they die, the kids get inheritance. But there are ways to prevent them from getting inheritance. For example, if old parents have the house, there is such thing as a reverse mortgage. When the bank gives you a lot of money, but when you die, it takes your house. It doesn't take your house, but when the house is sold, this money is deducted from the price. So yes, it's less and less acceptable to expect, because we are changing generations now. For example, the previous generations is baby boomers. They are dying now, mostly, and they do leave apartments, houses, wealth. What about our generation? I doubt. I'm not sure if it is acceptable that much in the West anymore. But also it's a question whether it's needed or not. If the kids are well established and longevity of life expectancy is 80 years, so the kids will be like poor King Charles III got his crown only when he got 72, 75 years old now, right? The same is here. So the inheritance will be very late solution that will not actually solve anything, because people of the next generation, they're old enough to think about their own inheritance to their kids. It's like too late, too little and too late, right? So also the society doesn't like when the previous generation accumulates wealth, and they usually try to tax inheritances to prevent from this, because the separation between the generations and between people allows to make people work hard. Because if you expect to get your inheritance, you don't have much motivation. But this is going to change too, because with more and more automatization and artificial intelligence, the expectation that people should work efficiently and productively will be less and less, because the use of this intellect would be cheaper and more efficient than the use of humans. So there is no such need. We are moving towards things that they never were possible for free. Like, could you get the books for free? No, maybe in the library, but not much of them in local libraries. Could you watch the movies for free? Could you entertain yourself for free all day long? No, you had to pay money, and pretty like I had a huge library, right? To buy the British Encyclopedia Britannica cost me $1,500, $1,500 in 1999. And now the Wikipedia is way more voluminous than Encyclopedia Britannica, right? So, and it's free, and it's updated immediately. So there are so many things that are free, and there is no need to keep. And when I saw that my library is not interesting to my kids, I just got rid of it. This encyclopedia I sold, because they stopped printing it on paper, and it became kind of rare. So I sold it for $800 in 2010. But Most of the books I just gave away and disposed. Because again, we have access to any kind of texts, most of them for free. Also, what I was thinking, when you were a child, and I was a child, when you were falling asleep and left alone in your bed, you were looking at the carpet on the wall, imagining different creatures on this carpet. Did you do this?
I don't remember that.
I did. Now, kids, they don't have to interact with reality. They will fall asleep with the smartphone, and the first thing they will look at will be the smartphone when they wake up. Unless there are some crazy parents that restrict them from doing this. But for me, that's what happens, right? I spent my life in virtual environment almost all the hours of my life. I eat in front of display. I look up things before I get to sleep, and immediately when I wake up, I get the phone again, right? So that's the question, whether the especially in the successful societies with good social support, people are not afraid anymore from being hungry, being poor, being homeless. And when those basic things are met, and if they work online, they entertain themselves online, and even have sex online most of the time, there is no way why would those old things matter, right? What do you think?
Unfortunately, not all things are free for us, and we may compare to different lives. For example, the one who inherited something, some capital, and can get rate of return on his capital, and will never work, will never earn money to sustain his life. And another person who has to work to sustain his life. What about this? If someone has inherited capital without need to work at all, will this person will be happier actually if there is no enforcement to work to do something what you really do not like to do?
Yeah, but we are talking about the basic income where you don't work either. And that's probably will be the inevitable imminent future, because again, our productivity of our like 100 years ago, more than half of the population was involved in the industry and agriculture. Now it's less than 10%. So the efficiency of how we produce food and industrial products has grown so much that most of the people are free not to produce anything valuable. The rest of the people are working in service. And we know that service can be easily replaced by artificial intelligence and other things, which is already done now. So if we are looking into the future, probably the question of working only because you need to make your living will not be an issue in developed countries. And all countries, as we can see, they are slowly but surely moving towards better development, unless there are some atrocities, war, or other problems, which we believe can be temporarily. So I would say that the future of accumulation of wealth on the personal level and inheritance is not very big. People will not look into this with such a respect and importance as it used to be. But again, when we're talking about the fortunes as capital, right? If this is the fortune around $1 million in the West, it's not much money. $1 million is not much money. The house cost $500, $400. In Toronto, there are no houses less than $1 million. So in order to be really rich, you need to have $100 million at least. And those fortunes, they cannot be created en masse. Like not very, very many people are reaching such amounts. And also, the bigger money, they are already not the personal wealth. It's some instruments of the economy that are used to operate large businesses or financial funds. They don't have much influence on the personal life of the person that owns them. Even more so, the person becomes a slave of this money. Not the money is serving him, but he has to serve this money to make sure that they're not lost, the money is not lost, the money is invested, the money is not making any harm to anybody, because it's easy to do the wrong move, and then you can see that the money can be used not for very good purposes. Environmental, nature, or any other things. Like managing the funds is a full-time job, and some people might find it not much fun. Also, you become a target of so many others who would like to get a piece of your wealth. In the West, we have special lawyers that looking for people that have money, and then looking for the ways how to sue them to get money from them. Okay, and that's one of the reasons why even if people have money, they try to hide it offshore and not to invest in full in properties and use the mortgages. So this money cannot be easily taken from them. But like I said, in different countries, it is different. And even in the same countries, there are different mentalities. But I believe with the time, it will be more and more universal that money is not the key. Because when we develop these virtual worlds, it will become more and more satisfying and less primitive, as they are right now, for example. And they will not be very costly, or even they will be free, as we can see. In terms of resources, it doesn't matter, because when you use the resources like the internet, you do not consume it. It's still available for everybody else. You probably consume some internet traffic, but it's not the same thing as, for example, if you do the wallpaper with a beautiful fireplace and the sound of rain. Right now, it's available on big display, but tomorrow it will be available in virtual reality that will feel like you are in a castle sitting in front of this fireplace and listening to the rain, and it will be free for everybody. So what's the point to make such an effort and make millions of dollars and buy this castle and sit there and have a lot of problems because it's old, there are rats all around, and it's rotten. And when you can actually, today you will be sitting in the castle with the fireplace, and tomorrow you will get bored with this, and you will change it, and you will sit with the window in Venice or Hawaii or whatever you like. And more senses will be affected to create this reality. Like Elon Musk is working now on interaction between the computers and the brain. I do believe that we will be fully submerged in those virtual realities. And in these terms, it's not, it's like living lives in limitless resources, when the material resources on one hand are produced very efficiently with very high productivity by the automatic factories and so on, 3D printers. Like you don't have the fork, you'll press the button and your 3D printer makes you the fork. Okay, instead of you going to get it, you just print it from plastic or whatever material will be used at that time. We're already very close to this, at least in the West. If I need the fork, I don't have to go out. I can order it, and in some places already the drones deliver, and those little buggies deliver, and you open and you take whatever they deliver, right? So that's only the beginning how it will look. And I believe that 3D printing will be very cheap. Like if you still have to find something physical to make something physical, you will be able to print it. So that's pretty much the future. And
as soon as you start to talk about virtual reality, what I would like to say that even now we consider an issue of private property in virtual reality. We would like to have our digital assets, real digital assets with real private property. So we are going to collect things even there, and even there we would like to leave them to someone, to inherit them, even in virtual reality.
we do. For example, they have value, like internet YouTube channel with millions of subscribers, because it can generate the wealth, and also it can make a certain influence.
Or you may have some magic sword in a game, and you would like to have property rights for that sword.
Yeah, I heard that,
really,
but it's
mostly present it.
It's trying to use our outside physical mentality inside the computers. It might be not very popular in next generations. Also, the competition in the virtual reality is so high that for any paid services, you will get hundreds of free services that might be even better. All right.
But anyway, now many people buy NFTs in digital world. I
think it's a very temporary thing, like a pyramid, because it's just another way to trade something which doesn't have any real value. It's like Bitcoin, just the program that creates certain algorithms that allows to make an exchange, and the emission of more Bitcoins is limited to the ability of the mining in Bitcoin. So these new things to own the virtual properties, again, it's like nothing. Nothing that someone attributes the value to something. It's like a pyramid, right? There is no real value to this.
I mean, those assets which you use in games, for example, you really use these digital ammunition to win or to make your game.
There is no limited
funny.
resources. They created with this NFT, how you call it, NFT?
Not fun. Not fun.
Yeah, they created the illusion of limited resources, that any digital property can be unique, and that's how they created the way to attribute the value to something unique. But it's all illusionary. It's not unique. It's unique on purpose, on only purpose to make it.
Everything is temporary. Even houses we build, they are temporary. They will not exist in hundreds of years, for example, depend on the quality of materials. All assets are temporary, digital assets as well. But for some time, for a while, you can own them and you can sell them, present them, accumulate them.
You can do whatever. You can trade whatever you want to trade, right?
For me, it shows that it is something what is deep in our minds. We continue to do that even there in digital world.
No. Humans, when we went to the primitive societies, they tend to live like very simplistic, non-proprietary lifestyles, where most of the things are in common use, that everybody can use it, or like we say now, public use. It's not something that inherently human to accumulate. Seriously, the native Indians in America, they couldn't understand what's the reason behind this intention to accumulate things that Europeans were so fond of. So
I think that all life forms are inherent accumulators. Even fat on our body is
depends.
Is the result of accumulation, or food or vegetable is the result of accumulation.
It depends on the environment where the living organism is actually living. If there are long winters and the need to accumulate the fat or whatever, the food, then yes. But the species that live in equatorial parts of Earth, they don't do this. Mostly they don't do this because they don't have seasons. They have this good weather all the time, and there's no need for that. And that's what with humans, we are more and more protected from the seasons. Look at our lives. When we lived in Soviet Union, we couldn't find the watermelon in winter. But now in our supermarkets, you can buy fresh strawberries, watermelons, bananas, anything. So also when there is such a diversity and abundance of the resources, no point to accumulate them. Our old generation, they're still trying to keep extra things stored in fear that there will be a deficit. But the younger generation who never that wasn't exposed to the deficit, they They don't do this. I distinctly remember when I got married and the parents of my wife came and saw that we don't have anything stored. They said that the husband is no good because he doesn't have anything extra stored on the site, right? But trying to do this actually depletes the resources at the moment when you do this. Like you can have a better use for your money in stable society, but if you want to follow the old ways, you go and spend all your money on sugar and matches and put it in your storage. That would be considered like a mental sickness, right?
Yes, right. I never stored food at home before the war. Now I have stocks of food because we know that any day catastrophe may happen. For the case of emergency, we have product right here.
Of
I
course,
never did that before.
of course, because
There was no need.
of course. But we hope that these circumstances will not be permanent. And in Soviet Union, that was the permanent problem. And in old farmhouses, they have to store their produce for the winter months. So we are moving towards the lack of necessity of such behavior, because the probability of the deficit of different things is not very high anymore. Yeah.
There is an idea, I heard of it, to prohibit inheritance at all. So that if you accumulate a lot of wealth, you are not able to leave it to your children at the end of your life. All what you stored will be left to the society. What do you think about this idea?
No, any rule,
Will individuals be still motivated to
any
work
law,
hard, to be
any
productive?
law can be bended. The wealthy people do not leave the inheritances anymore in the West. They make trusts. Trust is a not-for-profit organization, the fund, which purpose is to support the certain family. That's how they do. And they invest all their money in trust, and they appoint the directors for this trust, their kids as well as themselves. And when they die, they don't leave anything. As the directors were the directors of this trust, they continue
in order not to be taxed?
Not to be taxed, yes.
Mm.
Not to be taxed. Mm-hmm. And also, when they keep this money there, they don't have to pay taxes for this money because you donate it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a gray area, but that's how they do all of them, mostly the trust.
Let's speak about not material accumulation. For example, about culture. In my opinion, culture is something that is accumulated by the society.
You mean the material culture or virtual culture?
I mean immaterial culture. Our knowledge, for example, tradition, knowledge, music, songs, arts.
It gets gets harder and harder to sell, to get money for this, but the systems are built to pay back to the creators, like in YouTube, in other platforms, where the content is used, it's automatically causes to pay to the creator.
I
many
mean,
times,
not
many,
monetary value of it. I mean, the accumulation of immaterial value is our inheritance in a cultural form. That we are able to store it through our books, for example, through our audio video records now. So we store more and more knowledge from previous generations, what we could not do before.
yeah,
Before,
absolutely.
people accumulated culture in the form of legends or stories like that, but now we accumulate a huge amount of information forming our culture, and it becomes bigger and bigger in the snow roll.
On the other hand, we get more efficient systems and browsers that can pinpoint the exact things that we are searching for. So yes, that's why I got rid of my library, because if I remember that I read something somewhere, it's way easier for me to find on the internet. The same even about my books. They are all on the internet. Of course, in old times, I used to print them, and I had this complete works in a number of volumes. But if I needed to find something, even in my own books, I would have a difficulty to go and browse through all those books. But now it's enough for me just to put in some keywords, and here we go. I get my own quotations from the internet, right?
Yes, right. I think digitalization gives us a lot of opportunities to store our cultural inheritance. It's easier than to keep architecture forms in material form, buildings. Imagine that you keep the building from 2000 years, from 1000 years ago, from 100 years ago, and now we build new buildings, new bridges. Will we store them for future generation or destroy? How would select what should be kept, what should not?
I think there will be things like internet archaeology, looking layers and layers of the internet, finding things from 100 years ago, when the internet will be actually around for 100 years. Right now, there is a website, maybe more than one. I don't remember how it's called, way back it's called, or something like that. It remembers how the websites looked 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. It actually scans the whole internet and preserves the history of the internet. I can see my websites from tens of years ago. So I believe that there will be something like archaeology on the internet.
And one more thing which we inherit is power. Let's speak about that. Power, I mean, is monarchs. When you inherit your social status.
The power, again, there is a erosion of power in this world. The ways how they can influence us are not very efficient anymore. We don't have same TV channels. Everyone is building his own reality and living in his own virtual world. He or she looks up the news that less irritate them, from the sources that less irritate them. For example, you living in Odessa in Ukraine, not very likely willing to get your news from Russian channels. You can. I don't know if they're blocked or not, but you can find some ways, VPN or whatever. But it's not likely that you will be taking the news from there. You would more take the news from the local sources, right? The same as others, and they depict very different pictures of the world, very different. I sometimes go intentionally to watch how they reflect some things, and the things that we believe are very important, have tremendous importance, they just ignore. And other things that are not important, and it's not just some private sources, it's influence of so many others that are comfortable with this information rather than other sources. So I'm saying that the ability to really impose power on people is less and less efficient, all right? And and the value of this power is less and less. Look at our kings and queens. They're just, I don't want to say clowns, because I'm the subject of the crown. But they don't look very real, right? And those that try to give the power on to next generation, it's not treated well by the society. And also the kids, they don't want your power. Many times they just don't want whatever you want to leave them. They don't want it. They don't want any of it. And that's another tragedy. We who were born from those that try to make a legacy, to build something that lasts, now it's not very relevant to the modern generations. You are actually left alone with your reality, whatever you think is important, and it's not necessarily really important to anybody else. And whether it's bad or good, look, we saw how the maniac with limited old views from 1930s can throw the whole region into the war. It's better that people don't have that much power, as we can see in the Western countries, at least. But yes, there are theories of conspiracy, that there's some forces and powers behind the scenes that are influencing it. I do believe they are, because every time when someone is just summoned in a small group, like 2-3 people, they're trying to make some kind of a conspiracy. So it's inevitably that the conspiracies are created all the time, and some of them die even before they get implemented. Some of them are getting implemented, but there is no real consequences to them because they're not successful, and so on and so on. That's why I'm not sure that even if there are very efficient conspiracies behind the scenes, they are still humans, and they are still getting not always getting the results they expected to get. So if someone talks about COVID-19 conspiracy, inevitably, even if there was nothing in the beginning, when such a potent, powerful event took place, a lot of people tried to conspire around it. And some of them was successful, some of them failed. And but that's the beauty of it, that no conspiracy is successful 100%. And then we have this very volatile world where still things are very unpredictable, isn't it?
Yes, but why we still follow this tradition? I mean, inheritance of crown. For me, as Ukrainian, it looks, I'm sorry, but it looks really very silly. I can't imagine anyone in Ukraine to be a king or a queen, and if the Ukrainian people would take him or her seriously. It's impossible to me to see it from far, to look at this from far. It's look very strange, very strange.
Look, your northern neighbors, Belarus, Lukashenko is real king, and he's trying to inherit his power to his son. So it's not that ridiculous. It's the way how the people's mentality can change very drastically and very fast. Look at Russians; they were quite free people, even 5 years ago, 3 years ago, 10 years ago, and look at them now. They're scared. They're really scared. They can't say the words here and there, and their children see them, and they silence their children, saying, "Don't say the word war. Don't say this, that." So don't be that very proud of your people that very free. It all depends on the circumstances. It can change both ways, either way. It can go to a free society, or it can.
You are free there in Canada, or people are free in England, but anyway, they would like to have kings. Why?
Why?
Is there some sort of gain for them?
It's cute. It's kind of cute. There's a high authority that you can appeal to. There is a high authority. How it is built. For example, you're asking the person that lives in a country where the head of the state is the crown, the queen and the king. They have the representative of the crown in Canada. Officially, the crown is the head of Canada, and they have representative, the Governor General. Governor General has the functions of the monarch in Canada. So every prime minister has to be appointed by the Governor General. Governor General can let the parliament go and call it prorogue the parliament and call it again. It has a certain ceremonial and not only ceremonial functions that gives us the certainty that there is something higher than our prime minister and the ruling party, which makes it like the way it gets less power even in theory, okay? So it's like why people keep God, because there is someone you can appeal to when no justice is made anywhere. Like the crown can parole anybody. Like you made a crime, you have to serve 24 years. The crown can say, no, we forgive, go. They don't do this, but they can, right? They can theoretically appoint the prime minister, not to appoint the one that has been the head of the party that got the majority in the parliament. So I believe that this one of the reasons. Another reason is a tradition, because the British monarchy is associated with wealth, with history, with power, with well-being. Commonwealth is called, all our countries Commonwealth. So yes, every time when something changes with the royal family, we have voices saying, let's make a referendum and get ourselves free. Especially in Australia, it's more than in Canada. But even now, when the Queen died, there were some voices to why do we need this monarchy above us. I changed my mind. I was very much in support of the monarchy. But when I was persecuted by the authorities, when I was a priest, all my troubles were crowned against Mr. Boris Krigel. Crowned. So who was the one who was making trouble to me? And since then, maybe on the basic level, I even once got drunk and was looking at the $20 bill where we had the Queen, and I was telling her, what do you want of me? So maybe just the personal, if they would do the referendum today, I would say to make Canada independent. I'm a little bit sick and tired with these guys. But first 10, 12 years living in Canada, I enjoyed it. I was like Sherlock Holmes. I was the subject of the Queen. I gave the oath when I got the citizenship to the Queen, right? And her heirs. But I don't think that it's really matter because our connection to Great Britain is not very strong. Not very strong at all. And they're quite different people on the other side of Atlantic. With different mentality, with a lot of different ways. So I wouldn't say that it's really, if not the death of the Queen and not the all those scandals that they have from time to time, we would just forget that we have the head of state, because it just doesn't have really. Well, it reminds us every time we have this $20 bill because we have a Queen, and now we will be having a king on our bills. But we are so used to it, and we don't use much cash anymore. We don't have portraits of the Queen everywhere, like it used to be in Victorian time. In Victorian time, you would have a portrait of Queen Victoria in every school, in every court, everywhere. We don't have it all. I don't even sure if we have any portraits anywhere. We have all these Canadian insignia, but it's like the flag and like the coat of arms, which has a lot of elements from the royalty. But the flag, it's more about independence rather than connection to British. It used to be a flag that looked like British flag before, but in the 70s they have changed to this flag with red maple leaf on it, which since then you can see everywhere in Canada, and in every school, in every courtroom, everywhere. So it doesn't remind much about the crown anymore. Our anthem, the national song, is not God Save the Queen or God Save the King. We have Oh Canada. Oh Canada, yeah. It's different, and it doesn't, I think it doesn't even mention Queen in these words. Our home and native land. All our sons come in. True north. There's no words about Queen in our anthem. Oh King. Yeah. Anyways, we have discussed the whole topic from top to bottom and from bottom to top. I think that the changes that we can witness, they're positive, they're more liberating, and it's very ridiculous to wait until your parents die to get a crown or to get an inheritance. And it's very ridiculous to work all your life in order to leave whatever you made to your kids. It maybe feels good, but it's not very productive, especially when these kids, it can spoil them. They can actually, there was a point in my life when I was quite rich and my stepdaughter got married and I gave them the check of $100,000. And later they were accusing me because I was buying and giving them everything that they wanted, and they didn't have even the chance to want anything or to achieve anything. And it was a very weird claim, right? But I learned that probably we can never be good enough for our children. And it's a biological thing, because biological life is trying to oppose the next generation, so it achieves something different and something more and pushes away the previous generation. Because if the young wolf stays with the wolf mother, it will not be enough food for them to survive. They will kill too much prey. So the wolf mother is pushing him away, so he finds his own piece of land where he will be hunting. So the same biological mechanisms are working here, getting our generation support.
I would like to share with you now that my view of accumulation changed because of wartime. It started in 2014 for me, when the first wave of war started, when you get up early in the morning and understand that today I can lose everything I have.
Yeah.
And I can't take it with me, even if I run away. I'm not able to take this apartment, to take fridge, to take TV sets, to take beds, to take what? From one side, you understand that there is nothing worth accumulating, nothing. Because
I had a complicated life
now
too.
a lot of people have their life destroyed entirely. From the other side, I understood that not having some cash in store, it's also very risky, because you leave your source of income, you lose your source of income. There is no way to earn money anywhere. So if you have some cash in your table, it's not bad, because you can use it immediately. So I would suggest to have some very liquid assets which you can use immediately, but accumulate, create wealth is really very risky, and there is no way to protect your wealth. Actually,
That's right. But look at my life. We had a nice apartment in Russia, right? The Soviet Union collapsed. We decided to immigrate to Israel. We lost this apartment. So one home was lost. Then I had a nice home in Israel, but we decided to leave because there were war and troubles. I bought a house in Norway. But in Norway, we didn't have any status, and I was applying to immigrate in Canada. I loved this house in Norway very much. So we had to get rid of the house in Norway. And then I had this house, which I loved very much for 20 years in Canada, which I had to get rid of because nobody wanted it. And since then, I'm not building my houses anymore. I just live in the most simplistic way as I can. If I don't have money, I use the social support that we have in Canada, like food bank and other things. If I have money, I donate it a lot. I support, including people in Ukraine and in other parts. But we cannot compare because you're a mother of children, and mostly you live in a very tricky times, in a very tricky place, which I hope very soon will become peaceful and developing. We all feel that something good happens to Ukrainian self-awareness. It's fortifies you as a nation and builds the real desire to survive and rebuild the country. And it is something you are losing millions of people that didn't want to stay. And the balance is changing because those who stayed anyways, they probably will be way more motivated to make the country they stayed in bad times more successful in good times. So I'm very positive about it. It's very painful what have happened, but we have to see the positive things in everything because it's just better than have negative things. So I believe that it will make your country better. You have a very, very beautiful country, very beautiful people. I married Ukrainian recently, right? So from all the 8 billion people on earth, I have chosen Ukrainian. So there's yeah, there's reason for that problem. So a lot of sympathy. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.